Sure, all of us love playing PrizePicks for those major sports like NFL, NBA, and MLB. But what happens when it's the dog days of summer and it's just MLB and esports? What are you going to do? You're just going to play MLB and that's it? No, you need to adjust. That way you have more options when you're picking your PrizePicks squares. Learn how to gain an edge and bet on esports. That way you can mix these plays in with your MLB plays and set yourself up for profitability during those dog days of summer. But not only just the summer, that's the thing about esports. These guys play all year long, thousands and thousands of games every single week. There basically is no off season for esports. So adding esports to your arsenal opens up so many more profitable betting opportunities you can be taking advantage of. And the best part about it is that you don't need to know anything about esports in order to be profitable when betting it. I'm telling you, you could be the biggest sports junkie in the world and have never played a video game in the world, but still put this to use and be successful doing it. Let's just jump right into it. We are going to be plus EV betting, the same strategy we use when betting the NFL, MLB, or NBA, but this time we're implementing it into esports. We're going to be line comparing different DFS apps and sportsbooks that have lines for CS2, League of Legends, Valorant, etc., and finding where on PrizePicks they are so far off from the rest of the market it makes sense to bet it there on PrizePicks where we have an edge. And to do that, we're going to be using Daily Grind Fantasy that once again helps us compare these different DFS apps back to PrizePicks to find the best possible value. Now, me personally, I do know a little bit about esports and how they work, especially CS2, which is going to be this example here. So for this example, let's pretend that I am you and I know nothing about esports. We're just simply going to line compare and see what is good value on PrizePicks. Well, we see here, the optimizer is recommending us to take this player Shock over 26.5 kills in maps 1 through 2 on PrizePicks, giving it about a 56.24% chance to hit the over based on where these other DFS apps are setting these lines and odds. But let's look across the market and find why this is good value. We see Underdog has this set to 28.5 kills. Hot Streak set to 28.5 kills with minus 155 juice to the over. So they are favoring the over of 28.5 kills. We have Parlay Play at 28.5. And then Sleeper just one lower than the rest of the market at 27.5. So if we just simply look at where these different DFS apps have this projection and then look at PrizePicks, we can all agree that PrizePicks is pretty far off the market with about 2 kills difference. This is just like major sportsbooks setting their own lines and odds independently for NBA and NFL props, right? Same thing here. These are just different DFS apps. They still set their own lines independently. They're all agreeing this should be around 28.5. So you have 4 data points agreeing this should be set higher than where PrizePicks is at 26.5. You're going to trust the 1 data point in PrizePicks or the 4 other data points that all agree this has a better chance to hit the over of 26.5 based on where they are projecting. So moral of that example was, even if you know nothing about esports, you can just simply lie and compare and see where you can gain an edge on PrizePicks. Now, as always, the more data points you have, the better, and the more confident you will be in the edge that you are getting. However, if we look at the next 2 plays off the optimizer, we can see we only have 1 other data point to compare to. And that just simply isn't enough. And that's because we won't know who is more accurate with their projection here when we only have those 2 that have lines set. However, we could just skip down here to Neeson, take the under of 15.5 map 1 kills on PrizePicks because we have 3 other data points telling us this is set too aggressive on PrizePicks. We see we have Underdog at 13.5. We have Hot Streak at 13.5, favoring the under with minus 157 odds. And then we have Sleeper at 14.5 with minus 120 odds to the under of 14.5. All clearly lower than PrizePicks, in agreeing this should be set lower. As far as line comparing goes, it's really that simple, and we can all agree nobody needs to know anything about esports in order to just simply look at these projections and find where PrizePicks is off. Now we want to amplify our edge with correlation. Adding in multiple plays that are heavily correlated into the same slip is only going to help us win more. And if you don't know what correlation is, in simple terms, if X happens, Y and Z are also likely to happen. For instance, if Patrick Mahomes is going over pass yards, Travis Kelce and Xavier Worthy are pretty likely to be going over their receiving yards totals. You can find correlation just like that in esports and use it to your advantage. For example, if you're playing the esports CS2, taking 2 players overs or unders on opposite teams in the same game is very heavily correlated. If you're taking 2 overs in the same CS2 match, you're rooting for a close game. Close game equals more rounds equals more opportunities for kills. And if you're you're taking 2 unders, you're rooting for a blowout, which means less rounds and less opportunities for kills. And for correlation in League of Legends, you actually want to take a player's over, and then on the opposing team, a player's under, which is very heavily correlated because a team can really dominate the game, leaving less kill opportunities for the opposing team. Now, I am about to show you guys the best way to be playing these correlated esports lineups, but if you are just simply line comparing and taking an individual esports play that is plus EV and throwing in them into slips that have other sports in it, you must be playing 5 and 6 man flexes, as those are mathematically the easiest slip types to profit on long term. However, if you are correlating esports plays, we are going to be taking advantage of the 4-man power that is a 10x payout on PrizePicks, because they are not going to payout shift for having correlation. If you were to try and put this correlation in a 5 or 6 man flex, they're going to give you a payout shift, and it just simply wouldn't be worth it. Now, I went to start building this slip out, and if you remember that play from very earlier on the top of the optimizer, Shock, 26.5 kills on PrizePicks, we can now see that they have bumped this up to 27.5. Why does a sportsbook or DFS app bump plays? That's because their user has an edge against them at that current line, and they need to eliminate that edge. So they have came up closer to where the rest of the market is. Now let's start building out this correlated 4-man. We're going to start off with Shalfie over 14.5 maps 1 and 2 headshots on PrizePicks. We can see that comparing to the rest of the market, Underdog has it set 1 higher at 15.5, and then Sleeper has it set to 14.5 as well, but heavily favoring the over at minus 185 odds, and a 4-man power on PrizePicks, we are getting it at minus 128 odds, so very good value here on PrizePicks when comparing to the rest of the market for Shalfie over 14.5 maps 1 headshots, so we've locked it in. Then, on the opposing side, we're going to be also taking an over in this game. Bellini over 26.5 maps 1 and 2 kills. Now, you might not be able to get the best value on every single play, but because you are playing them as a correlated pair, that increases your edge, so it's fine. So, if we go ahead and look up Bellini, we see that there's only one other data point, and it's Underdog at 27.5. So we're getting at 26.5, one lower from Underdog, but correlated, so it's fine. We got it into our slip. Now what do we do with the rest of the slip? And now to finish off building this slip, we have a couple different options. We could head back over to the optimizer and find 2 more plus EV plays and get them into this, like Zach Edey, over 14.5 points and rebounds, Andrew Nemhard over 7.5 assists. Or we can double down on the correlation and find 2 more plays in a separate game that are also correlated to each other. For instance, Fireflux, we have Paz here, over 31 kills, and he's going up against Naminga, which is Khan, this player named Khan. We're going to go ahead and take his over, which is also correlated. 2 overs in the same game, correlated, right? So now we have 2 separate games with correlation in each of those games, still giving us a 10x payout. And then just to show you here, if the correlation was taking the unders for both of these players, then we would go ahead and change it to under, and we would still get a 10x payout. PrizePicks is constantly changing and updating their rules for correlation and payout shifts, so make sure you are not getting a payout shift before entering. When line comparing to try and find value on PrizePicks for League of Legends, we typically only have one other data point to go off of, which is hot streak. Sometimes we'll have an underdog line, but overall, there just is not as many data points in League of Legends as there is CS2. For me, I personally believe that hot streak is pretty sharp in League of Legends. Now, I will say this because I view them kind of as 2 data points, right? They set their own projection, which is the kill projection here, but then they also set their own odds. Unlike PrizePicks that has set odds for all of these plays that don't change taking the over or the under, they actually set their odds as well and adjust to money coming in on those overs and unders and change their odds. So we see that PrizePicks has Viper at 14.5 kills for maps 1 through 3, suggesting the under because Hot Streak has it set to 12.5 with heavy juice, very heavily favoring the under of 12.5 at minus 269 odds, which means if this is true, PrizePicks is very far off with this 14.5 number. And since this is very heavily correlated, you might have to mess around a bit, like I mentioned, with the slip types and see where you are not going to get a payout shift. I promise, this is not rocket science and anybody can be profitable doing this. Just simply find where PrizePicks is off from the market and get those plays in. It's the same thing we do for major sports like MLB and NBA just here in esports. If you guys did want to check out Daily Grind Fantasy and start line comparing and finding an edge across all sports and esports, I'll leave a link down in the description below, but if you use code DustinDGF23, you'll get 25% off your very first month. However, that's going to be it for this video. If you guys have any further questions, make sure you leave them down in the comments and I will respond to them. But if you guys enjoyed this video or learned something, make sure you leave a like, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button on the way out as we post sports betting content like this every single week.